let's get to the Tenet trailer. I am more excited by that trailer than I have become for any Nolan film. And listen, I've gone on record. You can go back through these old episodes that I am quoted as saying that I do sometimes believe that Nolan is too clever for his own good. That sometimes he's ahead of the audience and it's really hard to keep up with him. But in moments when he's been able to implement his clever storytelling devices into more action-driven films, like the Batman trilogy, like Inception, very much so, he is such an exciting physical director. And the way that he uses inversion is the new technique that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, for a while. It's a little bit easier to wrap your brain around because you can see it. You know, it's with Interstellar, he left me in the dust with quantum physics and all the stuff that he was diving into, and the magical bookcase that, you know, communicates to Murph through the years and all this stuff. And I didn't care. But the stuff that I'm seeing in the trailer for Tenet, it was the perfect trailer in the fact that it basically set up who everybody is in it, showed up the chemistry between John David Washington and Robert Pattinson. They look terrific together. Showed off enough of the inversion to make me think like, oh, it looks amazingly cool, but also what is it? And still gave away nothing about the story. Like, I have no clue what is going on with the story, and I'm going to go opening day, whenever opening day is, and still be really intrigued to find out what is going on with it. Let me go to Jake, because I know Kevin will have a lot to say. Jakey, did it move your needle one way or the other any more than it already was?
Not any more than it already was, and I mean this in a compliment. It seems like a really fun collection of like Nolan greatest hits. Yeah. Like there are a lot of like aspects of Nolan in there that I love that kind of seem to be put together. But what's so fascinating is, as much as we don't know about what the actual plot is or like what the character motivations are, the actual concept itself is so brilliantly simple that I'm amazed. One, I'm both amazed and glad that no one has tried to tackle it before, because Nolan has now grasped. And what I mean by the concept is something is just as dangerous going backward as it is going forward. Like if a bullet goes backward into the gun, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the plot, like that's just as dangerous as the bullet going forward. And so utilizing time and utilizing these things that are maybe moving backward that you still have to avoid, that's such a simple premise that I feel like hasn't been grasped in the way that Nolan's grasping it. And I'm glad that he's the one that's really tackling, because I know that he's not going to let it just stop there. He's going to take that and then march down the gridiron with it. He's not going to stop at the 40. He's going to score a touchdown with it. A simple play that is going to turn into this beautiful touchdown. I'm really excited to see what he does with it. I don't mind that I've talked to a couple of people that use that expression, like, oh, it's the greatest hits of Nolan. Well, I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm okay with that, because in a lot of like some of my favorite Spielberg films, like he uses like Spielbergisms, and I'm totally like that's why I love him. There are few directors that I get as excited about when they have a new movie coming out, if only just because like I don't know what to expect. And in this day and age where we pick apart everything, I had no idea what's going to happen.
I also love that there's a line, if I remember correctly, don't they say like, oh, you mean time travel? And someone is like, no, it's not. It's
exactly.
not time travel. And it like deflates the argument that people are having going. It's like, oh, so Nolan's doing time travel? And then Nolan's trailer is like, no, it's not time travel. Don't worry about it. Yeah. We'll explain it to you when the time is right. So, Kev, I'm sure you watched it a few times.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
Well, it's funny because I feel like it's expected that I'm going to geek out over that trailer. But it's one of the greatest trailers I've ever seen. I don't understand how someone is working at his level. Right. I actually find myself contemplating that a lot. I'm like, how is a human being able to come up with what they're doing? If you look at his filmography, I understand the greatest hits element of it, but I just feel like
I didn't mean that as a slight when I said that.
Oh, no, I get that. But you're not wrong. I mean, he's been dealing with this inversion element since Memento. The opening shot of Memento is basically inversion as the bullet comes out of Pantoliano's head into the gun. I mean, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. I think it was Will, who tweeted a video out of Memento saying, here's inversion 20 years ago. And he's 100% right. We watched the opening of Memento. He's already been playing with this. My theory on Tenet is Tenet is the movie that Nolan has been wanting to make his entire life. And he finally has the budget. He finally has the filmmaking background to do it. And I think that Tenet is going to be a masterclass in one of the greatest filmmakers to ever walk this earth. I'm finding the detail-oriented elements of this trailer. I've seen it, I think, close to 20 times now. And I have gone through it frame by frame by frame. And there are so many things that I'm picking up on that I cannot wait to see how they play out. There's a shot earlier on in the first trailer when John David Washington and Robert Pattinson walk into that window room, and he says, you know, what's happened here? He goes, it hasn't happened yet. And then you see that police officer or that cop backwards his way out. And then you learn later on that John David Washington is going to be in forward motion fighting this guy who's in backward motion. So John David Washington had to learn how to fight backwards, essentially, right? So you're thinking about a guy who's punching backwards while acting.
Okay, so hold on. Stop right there. Let me ask you something. Did Nolan film the police officer moving forward, and then is he reversing his film? Or
Dude,
is the actor figuring out choreography-wise how to move backwards?
That exact question is why I have not slept in a week. I'm not kidding.
Wait, are you saying that you have insomnia?
Insomnia, yeah, that's funny.
Seriously? Like
That's a good one. That's really good,
I get a
actually.
freaking chuckle.
I'm giving you credit.
We're laughing.
I'm
It's
saying
good.
that was great.
What do you
That
want?
was actually really
parade?
good.
Kind of. The parade, the shit puns on this show normally get.
So to answer
See,
Sean's question,
your puns are good. We do horrible puns.
yeah, the worse they are, the better the reaction.
Yes.
Yeah, if they're really good, we're just gonna be like, it's because we didn't come up with it ourselves. That's why we're like,
Right.
No,
right,
but
right.
in all honesty, to answer your question, I don't know. And so the shot that I've been trying to dissect, and I've watched it so many times, is in the new trailer is the car reversing, the flip reversal as the cars are going in other directions. If you watch that shot closely, and Gabe and I have gotten into breakdowns on this on the text thread, that car that's flipping backwards looks like it's there. I mean, first of all, I guarantee you Nolan flipped the car. There's no question that car wasn't flipped. Sure. The question then becomes, okay, maybe that car is in a different shot that's been stitched together with another shot of cars going forward. So to answer your question, I think John David Washington is literally fighting the guy in reverse. I think he's actually fighting in full reverse. And then I think what's happening with the shot you're referring to when he comes out of that barreling out of that window, that's probably a reversal. Remember,
wouldn't that be an editing nightmare to do them separately? Like if at any point, if you did them separately and at any point the two actors take up the same space, then the shot's ruined.
Well, no, I think the fight is happening in camera, reversed.
Right. But not so much that like the cop is filmed and then John David Washington is filmed and then you lay the two.
They're both there.
Right. But I know, that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like you can't do that because at any slight, if both of them are existing in the same place by a centimeter, then it ruins the shot.
No, the choreography of the fight is done like that. So, for example, and this is just my guess. I watched a brief interview with John David Washington when I was able to finally get into that Fortnite thing after the trailer launched. John David Washington was talking about the fighting and how it was completely unnatural and different than anything he's ever done before. I think what's happening in this film is Nolan has gotten to a point where he is able to design shots fully in camera, whether that means getting a couple different shots and putting them together for one shot. I think that flipping of the car, as Gabe and I were discussing, is a separate shot that was done on a highway, probably blank. And then they take the real driving cars, pop them in, and then make it a completely beautiful one shot. The fighting, though, is just insane. I think this film is going to be his masterpiece. And I think he's already made a bunch of masterpieces in my opinion, but I guess by the definition of a masterpiece, it's the person's best work. I guess if you want to put it into a Webster definition, I think Tenet is going to be beyond comprehension.
So right now, Nolan's best film for you, Kevin, is Interstellar. Jake, his best film is
Dark Knight.
And mine is The Prestige. So we'll see. We'll see where this ranks.
Wait, I have a question. The clip, I didn't see this tweet. The dude that pulled the clip of Memento and said that Nolan, was that meant to be a slight? Like Nolan?
No. I think he was just explaining that Nolan's been dealing with inversion and
well, I mean, keep in
reversal.
mind, before Spielberg made Jaws, like he made Duel, which was like kind of a warm-up movie for Jaws.
Right.
It's about people being, it's basically like Jaws but with an 18-wheeler. Like, so I feel like sometimes directors not like are repeating themselves, but sometimes they're warming up an idea without realizing that they're even having it.
But also following is basically Memento. If you watch it, it's like it's kind of cool.
I find that interesting that the conversation, you can have this conversation with directors in general, in that their earliest works are sometimes their most passionate because they're finally getting a chance to tell the story that they want to tell. But by definition, they should be better later, right? Because they're figuring out how to make movies more. But then you find directors who, as they get further and further into their careers, not everybody, obviously, but they run out of interesting stories that they want to tell, and then they just start taking jobs or, other people's scripts, and their passion isn't necessarily there. It's weird, catch-22.
I understand what you're saying.
It's an example.
I'll say this, though. Anybody who watches that trailer, so what I did was I went to an official Warner Brothers website and I downloaded the full HD version of it and I just threw it on my computer. And that's how I've been watching it. And there's a couple things I want people to look out for as you watch it again. And I know these are things that are obvious maybe if you watched it multiple times, but just look for more of the inversion stuff because Nolan's very tricky as a filmmaker. He puts things in the foreground and the background and the middle ground of the shot. And he wants you to look around. You are working as you watch a Nolan film, which is why I love his work so much. But pay attention to Kenneth Branagh. There's a sequence where he's walking across a road with a mask on. Look in the left corner of the screen. You'll see a window reversing as it's forming after a bullet was shot. Also, in that fight scene we're referring to with John David Washington, you can see the bullets reversing themselves off the window.
Yeah, I saw that.
And into the gun. So keep in mind, they're fighting practically there on set.
That TV spot you found that has an extended, and I'm trying not to, because I actually do, and once again, it's not a slight to the way you watch trailers. I actually do the opposite. I don't like to watch it so many times because then I find myself, it's my own problem. Whenever I actually end up watching the movie, then I sort of clock it as ooh, we haven't seen that scene yet. I know that scene is coming because I've seen it so many times in the trailer. If I become too familiar with the trailer, then it is in my head too much as I'm watching the movie. So I usually give myself once, maybe twice, and then I got to wash my hands of it.
In a weird way, I always found Nolan's trailers and TV spots to be extensions of his films. I did the same thing with Inception. I watched that trailer 30 times before I saw the movie. I did the same thing with Dunkirk. I've always found that I don't know that he does this, and this could just be me being a fan, but I always found that his trailers are for his fans in the sense of he puts them out knowing he's not going to give you much away just to get you excited for his work. And I think that he looks at those as extensions. The last thing I'll mention, Jake, you talking about the airplane. There's a scene, and I'm glad you brought that up because I just read an interview with Nolan about this. There's a shot at the end of the trailer of Tenet, which is very similar to the end of the Inception trailer, by the way. If you guys noticed, at the end of Inception, they do the Inception logo, and then they cut to the tag, which is Tom Hardy going, "You need to dream a little bigger, darling." Right? That was the joke bit at the end of Inception's trailer. This one has a very similar idea. Tenet, this time you hit the title card, then you have Pattinson and John David Washington walking in a joking fashion, talking about a plane going into a hangar. By the way, I don't know if I doubt this was an homage, but that plane going into the hangar looked exactly like the plane going into the hangar in Face Off. And I really want to know.
It reminded me of Airplane.
That's funny. I kind of want to know if that's the case because Nolan, I found out the other day that Nolan's a MacGruber fan. Nolan likes so many different types of movies. But that plane, by the way, I don't know if you guys read this yet. Are you guys ready for this? He bought an actual 747 and crashed it and blew it up.
Well, 'cause I read that he said that he did the numbers and it would be cheaper to run an actual 747 into a building than it would be to build miniatures and replicate it that way. He said it's actually cheaper to just do it.
It was cheaper than doing the CG. Basically what they would sometimes do in a shot like that is you would build an outer shell of a plane from whatever side you're shooting it from and then have the crash take place. If you watch Face Off, you can actually see fireworks going off versus explosions, which is really funny. But in regards to that, he decided, this is the same guy who flipped an 18-wheeler in Dark Knight practically. With
5 blocks away.
Yeah, you're talking about somebody who is You know what's funny about that story, Jake, is that he was going to do it with miniatures and CG. And like you said, it was cheaper to blow the plane up. So what Jake's referring to, there's a TV spot out there that you have to watch if you haven't seen it. That's 15 seconds that takes you inside that plane scene, which appears to be some kind of heist. Remember, they're going into the future, right? They're going into the future, and the future's rewinding, and they're trying to stop whatever events lead to some chaotic post-apocalyptic moment. It's unbelievably mind-blowing if you actually think about it. It's hard to wrap your mind around. But watch that plane scene. This is the last thing I'll say. As the plane is there, you'll see the firefighters walking past our leading characters. The firefighters are walking backwards. The water is shooting back into their fire gun as the characters are going forward. Debris is flying up in front of their face from the ground to the plane and reforming on the plane, so the plane's no longer exploded. And this is all happening as the characters are moving in forward motion as everything else is flying backwards. And you as an audience member, I think it gets to a point in a moment like that where it's so mind-blowing and hard to comprehend, you just have to feel it and not understand it, right? And that's the whole point of the movie, right? Tenet is about feeling it, not understanding it. And I think that's exactly what Nolan wants you to do. He wants you to feel this and not have to think about the technicality of it. Just feel it.
Okay. On May 26th, does the movie open on July 17th? Jake.
Yes.
Jake. Kevin. Yes.
Sorry.
Jake.
No.
I think it is going to open on July 17th. Okay, let's move on.
I think so too.
To our next story.
I will say I'm leaning more toward you guys after seeing.
No, too late.
I get to speak. No, just based on kind of what the country looked like this past weekend, which it looked like sort of this scraping for things to open back up. I'm still saying no, but I'm.
You're talking a month and a half now. A month and a half.
Exactly.
Also, think about it this way, and this is the last thing I'll say about it. Let's think about a 25-screen AMC theater, AMC Empire in New York City, right? So if Tenet rolls out July 17th, 25 theaters play Tenet. You do 35 to 40% capacity in every theater. You put 3 or 4 seats in between each person. That sounds completely doable to me.
Do you give them every screen?
Yeah, I think that's how it would work.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like at that point,
it's just the Tenet theaters.
I mean,
yeah,
okay,
that could be. Yeah, that could be.